Welcome to the Millennial Reset podcast. Stories of everyday millennials that are redefining success and happiness. Those that have decided to face those subconscious limiting beliefs head on and take the path less traveled to hit reset. Stories that inspire you to take the leap to pursue the passions, dreams, and goals of your inner child and not the expectations of society. If you're new here, welcome. You found your people. I'm your host, Peter Goose, burnt out millennial turned human design and mindset coach, and it's now my mission to create a space to have the conversations out loud around millennial burnout and mindset and inspire and empower my fellow millennial besties to decondition from the programs that keep so many of us stuck and rediscover your most authentic identity, or in other words, the Millennial Reset. And I'm so glad you're here. All right, welcome to another episode of the Millennial Reset podcast. I am so thrilled to have my guest on today, Sarah Plaisted. Sarah went from working in the Fortune 400 healthcare industry to now being a Reiki healer practitioner. So Sarah, thank you so much for being part of the Millennial Reset podcast and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I love all of your videos and what you're doing. It's just so relatable. So I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. Well, yeah, I think the conversations are beginning to happen more and more, which is what this podcast is all about. So let's dive right into things, Sarah. One of the big things with the Millennial Reset is it's all about redefining success and happiness and stepping into this more authentic identity. So talk to us a little bit about who is Sarah Plaisted? What makes up your identity today?
Yeah. So that's been the fun part is, kind of finding that out. And I really feel like I'm almost as close as I can get to like my best version of myself as a child. Like I feel like today I'm really able to get back to that creativity. So like all things music, sound, I do sound healing. I love just being able to buy like a rain stick or like a random little drum or something, here and there, those kind of little things that my inner child loves, and so that creativity and just really being present and getting out in nature and spirituality has been a big part of it too. That's really what makes me happy. That's kind of been like my passion recently, what's really like driving me.
Yeah, I love that. It's such a huge part of our identities that we just forget about, right? That inner child is always in there, somewhere deep down in there, but it just gets buried by the need to, compete in the rat race and survive out there. But when you get back in touch with it, the things that you begin to learn or relearn about yourself, right?
Definitely.
All right, so let's rewind a little bit then. Let's talk a little bit about, with your journey today, you've gotten into this whole spiritual journey. You're now doing Reiki, but and am I saying that right? Reiki, or is it Reiki?
Reiki.
Reiki. Okay. You can tell how
well, I think you did say it right. I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe
Reiki journey. But before this journey of stepping into Reiki healing, you worked in corporate 400 in healthcare. So take us back, let's say like 2 years ago, right? Where were you 2 years ago and what caused you to kind of realize that, oh my gosh, I am burnt the frack out and I need a change?
Yeah. So I worked at home for about 3 years. So 2 years ago, I would have been about a year into working at home. And that would have been right around the same time when I was needing to plan my next career move. And I was kind of trying to just dip my toes in, but then apparently, I did great. And so I got a promotion and it was wonderful. And then I realized like, it's funny because even that interview, the person that did the interview had to ask my other boss, is she sure? Because he said that I didn't sound sure. And I was like, yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But I knew on the inside, I wasn't sure because it just started to not feel like what I wanted to do forever. But I did it anyway, and I was great at it. I loved it. Got to meet all kinds of great people. It was a wonderful experience and a wonderful company even. But it just started to feel like I was just doing what everybody else wanted me to do, and it's like, well, what do I even want? And then when I found this spirituality, and it was right around 3 years ago, but I actually started my business and Reiki and things like that closer to 2 years ago. And I I was just like, oh my gosh, this is like the best, just really set my soul on fire. And I was like, I want to do this all the time. It almost like became an obsession, but really looking back, it was just because that's my passion.
Yeah.
And so it was like every spare second that I had, that's what I wanted to fill my time with. And I started taking classes, doing like an angel membership through Julie Jancis that I learned from,
Hmm.
that I listened to her podcast. And so all these things started falling into place where I had this starting to grow on the side, this like
Yeah.
calling and passion. But then society and everything tells me I have to have this regular job. I have to have a 9 to 5. I have to have benefits. I have to have a steady income, got to have this identity. And it's like,
Yeah.
says who? Like,
Yeah.
and just made me start really thinking.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about this before as well, but I love what you brought up too about like this whole idea of any time that you're getting ready to make a change in your life, being prepared for the ego to then begin to create the narratives in your mind that tell you I'm not good enough or I can't do this, right? And I think like what you're getting at here is like the distinction between the soul and the ego, right? And you have a choice every single day of which one you listen to,
Mm-hmm.
which is what I love
And
about, yeah.
I think I want to say you did a video on it, maybe on TikTok, but like, I totally agree with you that while some of it may have been burnout, and we talked a little bit about like my diagnosis and things like that, but ultimately I think what it was is it was my soul just screaming at me like, go do what you want to do, like life is
Yes.
short. And I was just thinking I was getting burnt out, but I just wasn't getting any joy from it. But really it's almost like that same thing. You'll feel those like almost like two wolves, or two wars going on. I kept saying I feel like I have two wars going on, or
Yes.
and you just kept like feeling those two feelings. And it's hard to break through that because
Yeah.
everything tells you you can't really.
Yep.
Kind of everything's like, no, you can't do that.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's this whole idea of like, it's one thing to be burnt out because of your work environment, toxic work culture and whatnot, but it's like a whole other thing when it's an identity thing, right? Where what
Yeah.
you do and who you are no longer a match. And it's like, okay, that's
Yeah.
the change moment.
Yeah, and it's
Um,
like everybody loved me at work, and I loved it,
yeah.
and it was all positive. But
Yeah.
all of that aside, how did I feel? I felt
Yes.
awful. I felt awful,
Yeah.
and nobody would have known it. You know what I mean? That's the power of being able to put on a brave face and everything. But it's like no. But at the end of the day, how do you feel? That's what actually matters. Like if you feel like crap on the inside, then it's not worth it.
Yeah. Totally. Ugh. And you talked a little bit about this before too, but I want you to share with the audience as well of like, what was that moment for you that like broke the camel's back, where you were like, okay, there's no going back now. Like this is now the direction that I'm moving in.
I think that I've found myself to keep like pushing it back, like pushing my dreams down, and like it'll go away or whatever, like just waiting it out.
Yeah.
And it never went away, and it kept coming back up, and I kept getting signs. I mean, I can't tell you the amount of people that I have met that make a point to tell me that they had a micro microbiology degree. They
Yeah.
were in like banking. They were in like, this or that, and left and then started and became a successful massage therapist or astrologer or Reiki therapist. I mean, all these people that I kept meeting, I'm like, okay, well, if they can do it, why can't I do it?
Yeah.
And I just started like realizing that, like, okay, people have done this before. It's just people don't talk about that. So I kind of started looking stories up and looking for stories of people that like beat all the odds or whatever. And
Uh-huh.
a lot of really successful people have done that. And so
Yeah.
then it's like, well, maybe that's worth the risk. And thankfully, so far it has been. I mean, I've only not been, it's only been like a month, but so
Mm-hmm.
far so good. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think that, and then also the big part was in October of last year, I got diagnosed with ADHD, and that
Mm.
I think was really like eye-opening for me too, because
Yeah.
like I knew that I was a hard worker, right? But I didn't realize really to what extent I was just really people pleasing and masking and doing what everybody said I should be doing and trying to
Yup.
live up to society's standards at the expense of myself, like
Yes.
totally at the expense of myself. I mean, aside from financially, pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like there becomes that awareness. I was talking about this the other day with somebody on the podcast of like there becomes that awareness eventually where it's like you begin to say, wait a second, all of the things that are like out here that I'm chasing are not actually what I really want. Like, what I really want is to feel a different way, to feel joy, to feel happiness. And it's like when you realize in that moment and reach that level of awareness, then it's like everything else just kind of naturally falls into place for you because it's like you become more aware to say, wait a second, is what I'm doing right now, is what I'm putting my focus on going to make me feel that way? And if it's not, then why the crap am I still doing it, you know?
Mhm.
But I think
Yeah.
we get caught up in that same mindset that you're just talking about, right? Is like, as millennials, we're programmed from birth for competition. We're programmed to people please. We're programmed to overcommit. And again, that's kind of like that ego part of us that begins to take over. And but the moment that you begin to just hear out that little tiny voice inside called the soul or your inner child,
Hmm.
everything begins to shift.
Yeah, and I think that's like a big thing, like we were saying, like through the spiritual healing. It's like I really have come to realize, even though I don't catch it all the time, but sometimes I will, that as soon as I have that like intuitive thought or that calling, then like immediately, like clockwork after, is going to come that hand, all those daggers of self-doubt and
Mm-hmm.
fear and why you can't do it. And like, so what I'm trying to do anyway is just really get used to trusting my intuition in
Yeah.
everything I do, like 1,000%. Like I'm talking, if I watch a show and I feel inspired by that person, I'll send them an email and ask if I can work with them one day. I'm talking like
Yeah.
bold, like
I
into
love
it,
that.
just like go for it. Because like what's gonna happen? What's the worst thing that's gonna happen?
Yeah.
To take all those things that made me great in the corporate world, which is networking and um, emotional intelligence and people skills and positivity, all those things, and then like put it in a ball and make it work for what I'm doing now,
Yes. For
doesn't
your
have to
goals and
be.
dreams.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at it as like maybe it was a dead end job, but I don't think of it that way at all. Like I think of it as a stepping stone, because I had to push myself to do that last role that I did
Yeah.
and be on camera all the time and be in leadership and all that stuff. All that stuff is
Mm-hmm.
definitely still helping me today. Like I don't know if I could have done it if I hadn't have pushed myself at my corporate job and taken that last promotion. Like I said, even when I was second guessing like crazy, and apparently it was at least a little clear that I was unsure about it, but I took that job anyway and did it and then proved
Yeah.
myself I'm doing it. But all the while I kept thinking, this is so hard. When is it going to get easier? And it never got easier. But
Yeah.
I just realized, okay, well, I faced that fear. I faced that fear like a million times of putting myself out there and fighting my anxiety and stuff like that. And so it really taught me so much that I'm going to use now still, every day.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah, I mean it's like that voice of the ego, right? The fears, the narratives, they're gonna happen. There's no
Mhm.
getting away from that, right? It's just becoming aware that they're there and that it's not actually you. It's just the voices of the program since birth or the beliefs that we still hold on to that create those narratives. And again, it's like once you realize that, it's like, oh yeah, I don't actually have to listen to that voice. I don't have
Yeah.
to have that voice dictate my next steps. And I
Yeah. And that
love,
like
oh yeah, go ahead.
ego and fear, I think, are like the two like biggest
Oh
thing. And
yeah.
I think that we've just been so, I mean, and it works for some things, right? It gets you through some
Yeah.
things, but
Helps you to survive.
you just like, I just realized like I think I was making almost every decision almost out of fear of some sort.
Yeah.
So now, like I'm saying, I'm trying to learn how to make my decisions out of only love and intuition and not do anything out of fear. Like
Mm-hmm.
if I'm doing something because I'm afraid, then it's like, well, that's not the right reason to be doing something.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and I love this part of your story too, where you talk about like some of these sabotaging beliefs that you had to break through and break down in order to really like step into this authentic version of yourself. And one of the things that you talked about so powerfully was this whole idea of how we grow up and get into adulthood, and we begin to compare ourselves to others. We begin to measure our self-worth based on the job title, and when somebody comes up to you and asks you what do you do, it becomes like that moment of pride to be able to kind of tell them all the things that you've accomplished. Talk a little bit more with us about that. What were some of those like specific beliefs that you held on to, and how did that show up for you?
Yeah, so I think that it's kind of twofold. So like my sobriety and my time in corporate America both were side by side. So I started
Mm-hmm.
my job in corporate America at 2 months sober. And so I totally like built my whole life up from, rock bottom or whatever you want to call it, while also working. So all of my identity as a sober, productive member of society was wrapped up in this job. And so it was a lot to untangle. Like I really didn't know who I was without that. And so whenever I got, I guess basically in my mind, what I was thinking was I got sober, I got this job, and then I started making money and I started, doing these things and get promotions. And in my mind, I thought that was making my in-laws, who I love and adore, accept me more
Mm.
because they all have master's degrees, they're lawyers, they're doctors, they're teachers, they have, I mean, name it, right? And
Yeah.
I was sitting at that dinner table before this job feeling really insecure. Once I got this job, that was my way of being like, look, I am successful too. And I
Yep.
didn't know. And it like was this weird like pride thing where I was like, now I'm going to see how far can I get in this company without a degree.
Yeah.
While my husband's doing his master's program and almost graduating, right? But it like became this challenge to myself and my ego. My ego really,
Yes.
I was like, I'm going to prove to everybody that I'm better at this and, all these things. But whenever I started thinking about like, who am I? It was like, I have no idea. I really didn't
Mm-hmm.
know. And one thing I'll say that is really, it really sticks out in my mind is that whenever my dad passed away in 2020, we like had to go through his stuff or whatever, right? Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
I came across some of the old VHS tapes, and I had seen them before, but it was like my home movies as a kid.
Yeah.
And it was even like, teenager, just me just being like pretty much my most like authentic self. And I was
Yes.
like, I just had this deal. I was like, how do I get back to that? Like, how do I get back to
Oh my
that?
gosh, you're giving me chills
I
because
was like,
I
she just doesn't give a crap. Like she
yeah.
just doesn't care and she doesn't self-doubt and she doesn't like worry about it. And I'm like, I've got to get back to that. And so I think like once I saw that, then I was like, okay. And so I've been trying to get back to that, but it's not, it's not possible to get back to that because, that's impossible. But really at the core, like
At the
that's what I'm
core,
trying to
yeah.
do now. Yeah. Like I
Yeah.
can just, I mean, honestly, it's helped me. I took the clock out of my kitchen like that. I try not to be like on a schedule at all. That's
Yeah.
what makes me feel free. Like not having somebody else plan my day out for me. And
Yeah.
from sun up to sundown, I'm doing everything for everybody else. Nope. I'm gonna be
Yeah.
on my own time.
This is like one of the things that I realized that was so powerful for me, right? Is like we have a default operating mode, especially as millennials, of defining our worth based on that job title, using that job title to validate our self-worth. And when you step out of that moment, when the job is no longer there, when whether it's your choice or not, right? A lot of people got laid off during COVID and went into this kind of crisis mode because it's like, wait a second, who am I when the job title is stripped away? But yeah, when you begin to step into that version of you when the job title's gone, that's where the discovery comes, right? And it's scary as shit because then you have to remember who it is that you are. But I
Yeah.
love what you said about the videotapes too, because I had the same experience. Like my mom will always show these, videos of when we were kids and we go home for the holidays and whatnot. And every time I watch them, I'm like, oh, yeah, that's who I am deep
Mm-hmm.
down somewhere in there, and I've just forgotten about it, right? it's almost like self-therapy when you watch these old videos of
Yeah,
yourself where it's like,
yeah,
oh
it
my
really
gosh.
was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking, I'm like, I should go back and watch him again. But yeah, it was that, and then like I think why I took a week off before I actually quit or actually left. And anyway, I had this recording of where I had a session with a medium a year prior, and
Uh-huh.
I real my angels are funny. I realized like all of a sudden I got this recorder out of my closet and was like called to listen to it, and I listened to it, and it was almost to the day a year ago, and I was saying all the same things, how I wanted to do my business. I wasn't sure if I could do it. I wasn't sure if, this job was right for me, and all these things about how I wanted to do the healing and the spiritual stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but I couldn't because I needed to do all these things. I had bills to pay, and we were going to get a new house, all this stuff. And it was like, oh my God, Sarah, you've been saying this for a whole damn year. And so that was when I was like, okay, it's been a year now. If it's not
Yeah.
better and that feeling hasn't gone away, then hello, you got to do something different. Like,
Yeah.
and it was
Oh,
just like a couple of those things. I'm like, man, I really have been like sitting and just sitting on this for forever. And
yeah.
I got to do something about it.
It's so amazing, so inspiring. And yeah, it's just it amazes me the more and more that I'm doing these podcast interviews of again just how similar these stories all are to each other of just we have lost touch with our true authentic identities.
Yeah.
Um but Sarah, what I love about your story is now where you are today. You've grown so much, you've stepped into this kind of new authentic version of you. Tell us a little bit about like what defines success and happiness for you today.
I think the happiness part, I really enjoy being able to like just be present as much as possible. And it's kind of funny because sometimes with ADHD, because again, that was only like 10, it was only, however many months ago, 6 months ago or
Mhm.
something. And so not having a set schedule, and then also learning how to like get to know my ADHD and stuff, and like having all this free time is kind of like a fun thing because I can get distracted and go from room to room, and nobody's going to get mad. I'm not going to be
Yeah.
rude. Nobody's like, why aren't you signed on or anything? And it's just like this whole like maybe like just restriction that's just like taken off. So I think I really enjoy just being able to do whatever I want almost like every day. Like I don't
Yeah.
have to plan it out. I just get up. I have a list of things that I want to work on, but just having that freedom to do what I'd like. So if I have a day where I wake up and I'm really drained, I don't have to do a ton. If I
Yeah.
have a day where I wake up and I want to do all the things, I can go do all the things.
Yeah.
And just trying to like get to know myself and really solitude. So I live in the middle of
Yes.
nowhere. So I'm lucky. I have a lot of solitude. I've got nature, and I uh, took myself out to get ice cream, yesterday, and made a nail appointment for today. Like I just do things like random things during the day, at
Mm-hmm.
like a nail appointment at 3 o'clock on a, Wednesday. It's like, what? So
Yeah.
just those little things actually kind of is to me like a little, I get my power back, I can do what I want to
Yes.
do. Who
Yeah, it's
cares
like
if
I
it's the
think
middle of
we
the
get
week?
right. I think so many of us, myself included, get so uncomfortable with loneliness, but I think the reason that we are so uncomfortable is because we don't know who that person is that we're lonely with, that person that is us. And it's that struggle of trying to figure out, like, oh gosh, the only person that I have to talk to right now is to myself. What are we going to talk about?
Hmm.
But you're right.
Yeah.
Like, you go to get ice cream by yourself, you go to get coffee by yourself, and you just be present in that moment
Yeah.
with like your inner child. So,
Yeah, I mean, when all else fails, you can always just go wander around a thrift store or something.
yup,
That's always
exactly.
entertaining.
Well, Sarah, I absolutely love your story, and I want to give you a chance right now before we end things to talk a little bit about your website and what you're doing now with Reiki.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So that's been my big focus is just kind of building my business and doing it locally, but also I'm able to do sessions virtually. So I can do like Zoom or FaceTime, and I do Angel Reiki. So that's where I use the help of the archangels to magnify my healing power and channel through messages that your soul needs to hear. A lot of a lot of inner child work that sometimes
Mm.
comes up there. And just really like tune into what your soul needs to hear. And my gift is that I am like a channel. And so I won't necessarily always remember exactly what I say, but I channel through prayer during my session. So I'll
Yeah.
usually pray over like each chakra and do meditation. And I also do sound healing and play the quartz crystal bowls. So that's been really fun. The sound healing is a big part of my happiness right now, like being able to just kind of like play around and
Yeah.
make music and, just do fun stuff like that. That creative side really brings me so much joy. So
Mm-hmm.
it's building my business, but it's also building my, my identity and my creative side back after kind
Yeah.
of not getting to do that for a while. So
Exactly. I love that. And where can people find out more about your offerings and what you do, your website?
yeah, so the name of my business is Serenity Healing with Sarah. And so that's also my website. So serenityhealingwithsarah.com. And you can book online, but I also do offer like 15 minutes free energy consultation. So if you wanted to just like ask about what might be a good fit or ask what you might need work on or just ask questions, anything like that, I'm always open to that too, because that's part of it is just letting people know more about it.
Yeah. Love that. Well, Sarah, we'll be sure to post that when we post the podcast episode. We'll post the website so that people can easily find you. But
Yeah.
super appreciate you coming on today and sharing your story. It's so inspiring, and I'm sure that so many others are going to resonate with all of the different parts of your story. So thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. And I think it's awesome facilitating this because there are so many people that need to hear that there's other
Yeah,
people out there going through it and making it through it. So
exactly, exactly. All right, Sarah. Well, thanks again. And thank you all so much for tuning in. Be sure and share far and wide with all of your millennial besties so that we can spread the word, right? That is not just you or me. And we can begin to have the conversations out loud. So be sure you can visit www.themillennialreset.com to learn more and subscribe to the podcast. And be sure to tune in next time for the Millennial Reset. Hey, Millennial Besties. If you're one of the millions of millennials experiencing burnout right now, yes, we're officially being dubbed the burnout generation, then it's important to know that number one, you're not alone. And number two, there are solutions out there. After years of struggling with burnout myself, I discovered two very unconventional secrets that created a huge shift for me. And that was human design and neuro-linguistic programming. Human design allows you to get back in touch with your genetic blueprint and rediscover your most authentic identity. And neurolinguistic programming gives you the tools to reprogram any limiting and sabotaging beliefs that may be holding you back from living out your true potential and identity. This unique combination and framework of human design and mindset work is what has allowed me and so many others to hit reset and start creating a life of less resistance and more ease and joy. So, if you're wondering what you can do to get unstuck from the constant stress and anxiety of burnout mode, be sure to visit www.themillennialreset.com and start creating your plan to start living a life that happens for you instead of to you.